You're listening to the Nourish Child Podcast, episode number 75.
Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Toddlers are snacking at surprising rates. If you know a toddler who is living off of snacks, puffs, fishy crackers, granola bars, or who is snacking every time he hops into the stroller, the car seat, or even if he seems to be snacking all day long, then this show is for you, my friend. Did you know 2 to 6-year-olds have the highest increases in rates of snacking when they're compared to kids their same age from the 1970s? One study suggested that kids are eating less at meals and more from snacks, and basically tipping the balance towards unhealthier food choices. And although we know toddlers need to snack, as parents, we want to make sure they are snacking on the good stuff, the stuff that adds nutrients to their diet, not the stuff that leaves our young kids at a nutritional deficit simply because unhealthy food is crowding out nutrient-rich food, or simply put, the good stuff. The good news, according to a 2015 report from Mintel, a marketing research firm, about 30% of parents are serving healthier snacks to their kids. Today on the show, I'm speaking with Stephanie Ferrari about toddler snacking. She's a mom of 2 toddlers, a registered dietitian, and the president of Fresh Communications. You can find today's show notes and relevant links over at jillcastle.com/075. Hey there, Jill here. Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm very excited to have you join in. My podcast is all about kids, nutrition, and feeding them. So if you've got a child or you work with them, you're in the right place. I run my business out of New Canaan, Connecticut, where I see private clients, operate my online programs, my blog and my podcast, mentor other professionals in their businesses, and create resources for parents like you. 2 of my favorites, which are soon to be available, are Fearless Feeding, How to Raise Healthy Eaters from High Chair to High School, the 2nd edition. And let me tell you, folks, it's been a long time coming. Marianne and I've been working on it for about 6 months now, and I can tell you that today, as of this recording, it is about 98% done. We've got to finalize the back cover, and then we're sending it off to the printer and getting it all set up in Amazon. So it should not be too long. I know some of you are out there waiting for it. And then the other favorite book, or actually your favorite book that I have written, or one of your favorite books that I've written, is Try New Food, which is an e-guide I wrote 2 years ago and I sell on my website, and you can also get it on Amazon. But the last 4 months, I have been working on the workbook version, and I just finished it and sent it off to the formatter. So I'm super excited about that. I've had it reviewed, I've had it edited, I've had other dietitians look through it for me and give me feedback about it. So I'm super excited. It's designed to help you walk through the steps of introducing your picky eater to new food. And it doesn't really matter how picky your eater is. Even if he's an extremely picky eater, this book will certainly help you. It is based on the program that I used with my own private clients. So those 2 books are coming soon. All that kind of stuff is on my website. I've got tons of free resources for you. You just have to head over to jillcastle.com and spend some time there looking around. So we are into the month of January at the time of this recording. And so I'm wondering, how's the new year going for you so far? How are those improvements coming along? On the last show, episode 74, I talked about mindset, motivation, and mastery. I chose this topic over New Year's resolutions. I feel like improvements are friendlier, more accessible, and attainable. So whatever you chose to work on, I hope it's going well so far. Me? Well, I'm happy to say I had a jump start on my improvements last October with my fitness plan. I started running again, and as you probably know, I talked about it in the last episode. I was a runner for many, many years and took a year off recently and thought I was done based on some physical sort of problems that I was having when I was running. I just figured that I was too old to run. And I feel like I've had a new leash on that whole scene. Late in October, I started a run walk program, and I've been doing it ever since. And I guess at this point, my longest run has been 7.5 miles. And I'm due for an over 8-mile run here coming up on one of these next weekends. And at Christmas, the Mister gifted me a Peloton bike for Christmas. I had been using the app on my iPhone and using my old spin bike for about a year. So he had a little pity on me and gave me a Peloton bike, which I got to tell you, compared to a spin bike, it's a very different experience. I do feel like I'm starting all over again. But I'd also stepped up my yoga practice last year. I really dedicated last fall my exercise regimen to be a little more committed to it and no longer let the work and the pile of work or the feeling of stress that I had so much work to do make my exercise take a back seat. And what's so interesting and funny is that I'm still getting all the work done for the most part. Yeah, I am. I'm getting all the work done, even though I block out an hour for exercise nearly every day. So it's kind of crazy how those steps we think we cannot take aren't that big of a deal when we actually take them. Life has a funny way of working out. So anyways, my improvements this year are to keep exercise as part of my regular routine and not let work become so big and important and stressful that it takes my exercise and my fun away. So that's what I'm focused on this year. And because of that, my word is balance. And it's not so much because I feel like I'm out of balance, but rather it's because I think I have a good balance right now and I want to keep it. So I'm focusing my attention on that. At the time of this recording, my college kids have gone back to school. Sad face. It was fun having them home. We had some epic dinners, a very fun New Year's Day drop-in party, some family yoga. We watched a bunch of our old family videos. It's just a great time. And while it's chaotic, when we are all home, it's great. It's really great. The only thing that's not so great is the grocery shopping every 2 to 3 days. But I've been trying a new app called Instacart. I have it on my phone and it hooks to several of the grocery stores in my area. And I can order my groceries and have them delivered in like a couple of hours. So on those really crazy days or those days where I've gone to the grocery store 2 days ago and I'm needing more groceries, it's been a really helpful app to use. But I digress. Let's get into the meat of this show. Today we're talking toddlers and snacking. And some of us need a reality check in this subject area. Hashtag sorry not sorry and hashtag you'll thank me later. Today, my guest is a mom of 2 toddlers herself, and because she works in the nutrition and communications business, she knows how important healthy snacking is for toddlers and also has a pulse on some of the innovations in snacking for toddlers. Stephanie Ferrari is a registered dietitian and a recognized leader in nutrition and business. As the co-founder and president of Fresh Communications, Stephanie develops modern, creative marketing and public relations strategies exclusively for food, nutrition, and lifestyle companies. She combines nutrition expertise with a deep understanding of food trends to bring credibility and clarity to the conversation about food. Stephanie's been featured in several major media outlets, including Fox, Cooking Light, Good Housekeeping Magazine, and more. And when she's not working, she's knee-deep in toys and leading sing-alongs with her 2 toddler daughters and her husband, Rich. I'll be sure to include Stephanie's contact information in the show notes at jillcastle.com/075. And because snacking is so important for toddlers, today's show is sponsored by the Healthy Snack Planner. Healthy snacks help your child get important nutrients, stave off hunger, and grow. Quickly learn how to plan healthy snacks, including which foods and nutrients are most satisfying to your child, how much food to offer, how frequently, and where your child should be eating those snacks. The Healthy Snack Planner offers a step-by-step system for planning healthy snacks, including more than 85 snack ideas to spur your creativity. You can get your copy over at www.jillcastle.com. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to the Nourish Child podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on the show today. We're talking about healthy snacks for toddlers, but before we get started, I thought it might be nice for you to share with our listeners today a little bit about yourself and your family, because I understand that you have young children yourself.
Yes, I do. Well, I'm a registered dietitian and I do have two girls. Madeline is 3.5 and Clara is 1.5. So yeah, lots going on there. And also I'm the president and co-founder of an organization called Fresh Communications.
Awesome. And what is Fresh Communications?
We are a PR and marketing agency that focuses on nutrition and wellness. We are staffed by registered dietitians and work with some really amazing brands on communications efforts that are driven by nutrition and healthy lifestyle.
Great. And then I just have to mention, you said your daughter's name is Madeline. I have a Madeline, probably the same spelling. Do you spell it Line at the end?
Yep, I do. Just like the book.
Yep, we do too. We do too. But we always have called her Madeline. And
is she
so
a Maddie?
Cute. No, she's not. People like to call her Maddie, but she refers to herself as Madeline. So it's interesting. She was never a Maddie until high school. And when she entered high school, then everybody started to call her Maddie. And she was like, I'm Madeline. I'm Madeline. It's a beautiful name. So, okay, let's talk about toddlers and snacking. I know this is a huge pain point for so many of my listeners, my people on Facebook, the families I work with. You know, snacking, whether it's a toddler or a child or a teenager, always seems to be a little bit of a bristle in a parent's back. But let's talk specifically about toddlers. And it seems like toddlers are snacking all the time these days. So give us a little background on what the diet of toddlers, particularly around snacking, looks like today.
Sure. Well, toddlers are champion snackers. And it makes sense because they're very busy exploring the world around them. And, you know, it can seem a little daunting to them to have to stop playing and have to stop exploring to sit down and eat a meal. So what we're seeing is that a lot of them are actually preferring to graze on snacks throughout the day. And, you know, I get that as a dietitian. I also see that as an opportunity to keep toddlers fueled with healthy foods. Their bellies can't hold as much food as adults can. And they're tiny humans and they're also very active. So it's important to keep them nourished. However, you know, snacking does need some boundaries because it can backfire. And, you know, sometimes I can see that this constant snacking among toddlers, it can lead to a lot of stress and angst for both parents and children when you finally get to mealtime.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when we look at snacking today in 2018 versus 10 years ago versus 20 years ago, you know, what's really changed? What are we talking about? Are we talking about nutrient intake? Are we talking about quality of snacks, frequency of snacking? Where have the changes sort of been happening?
Yeah, I'd say all of the above, Jill. I mean, the lines between snack foods and mealtime foods is starting to blur. I think that's a problem. So, for example, you know, one day a toddler might have a smoothie and some energy bites for a snack. And then the next day that could be her breakfast. And then the next day that could be her lunch. Whereas, you know, historically humans had much more defined and traditional eating patterns with 3 meals a day consisting of foods that matched those meals. So eggs at breakfast, sandwiches at lunch, you know, pasta and meatballs at dinner and so forth. In fact, you know, I read a statistic recently that said that in the 1970s, the average kid between 2 and 6 was only eating 1 snack a day. And today we know research is showing that they're eating, at 3 or more. And so certainly the types of foods are changing, but also the frequency, it's increasing. It's becoming a lot more frequent, seeing kids eating snacks. So that's where I think things have really changed in the last few years.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you said that the line is getting blurred between snack food and meal food, I feel like so much of my time around, educating around snacks with families is focused on, less snacky foods and more, mini meals, real wholesome, nutritious foods that are, combinations of food groups. So they are kind of looking more like mealtime foods. I'm recognizing that I'm advising that oftentimes in my clientele. And the reason behind that, I think for myself, when I think through it's to help them have more wholesome, nutritious foods and to get away from, those heavy crackery snacks that it seems like so many toddlers are regularly consuming.
Yeah. And I can completely understand why this is becoming more frequent to see them eating these crackery, these more packaged snacks. And I think it all comes back down to the fact that parents we're so busy. We have so much going on, and we're looking for real world solutions that can help us, feed our kids the way we know we want to and should be feeding them, but also eliminates all of that prep and all of that time it takes in the kitchen to prepare those foods. I mean, I completely agree with you. When you said the phrase mini meals, that's exactly how I like to think of snacks. Balanced mini meals that look a lot like the plates look at mealtime, but are smaller portions. And I think, where we should all strive to have that be the case as much as possible. Sometimes it's just not, sometimes we just need to do something quickly. And, that can be hard because there are a lot of packaged foods out there that are, too high in sodium or too high in calories or not high enough in fiber and protein. And so it's really hard to navigate the grocery aisle looking for those convenient foods. I do have a few that I rely on, but I think it's hard for an average parent today to fit in all of the knowledge they have about healthy eating into the busy schedules that they live day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think navigating that nutrition component is really challenging. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and this person was saying, I need to find something gluten-free and dairy-free and sugar-free, and it can't have preservatives and it can't have food additives and it's like, wow, cut up an apple.
Yeah.
And I think, and not to, downplay at all those desires of families to provide their children with the, simplest, most nutritious, wholesome foods that they can find. But I think you really hit on something when you say, marry that desire with the busyness and the shortness of time and the demands of a toddler. Let's talk about that a little bit, because when a toddler wants to eat, a toddler wants to eat.
And they want fun food. Like they want it to be fun, just like they want everything in their lives to be fun. And so you're thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about the nutrition. I'm thinking about the timing. I'm thinking about how busy I am and all of these things I need to juggle. And meanwhile, my child is demanding, something fun and sweet, right? And so, I mean, it really is no wonder why parents are feeling stressed about what to do in that situation, and that's why I want to help. I want to share some of the things that I do as a dietitian with toddlers that, makes it a tiny bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will get to that. Let's get to first, what are some of the biggest challenges parents face with their snacking toddlers? Let's kind of run down the laundry list. What are some of the biggest challenges you think parents are facing with their toddlers?
Timing is a huge challenge. I think we all know that we want to have, our 3 square meals and then 2 snacks at most in between those meals. But as we're carting our children from school to activities to home, with the naps and the meals kind of off schedule, timing can be really tough. I think a lot of expert advice out there, for example, says don't feed your children, in the hour before dinner. And I tend to agree with that. But I've also been in the position where I get home from a really busy day. I'm not quite sure what the kids have eaten before I got home. And they seem really, I call them hangry, like they're in that moment where it's like they're a little tired, they're a little too hungry. And it's like that half hour before dinner. And I don't want to give them something, but eventually you do have to, if you want them to be calm enough and enter dinner in a state of mind that can foster a good experience. So I think that timing for every parent, but especially parents of toddlers, can be a challenge.
I used to call that the witching hours. I think maybe some parents still call it that,
Yeah.
but 20 years ago when I had toddlers, it was the witching hour, and it almost always happened at 4:30. And so I'm curious, what are your solutions for dealing with that? I know how I dealt with that, but what would you advise parents in terms of how to deal with that witching hour or that hangry hour that you're describing?
Foods should be low in calories, high in fiber. That is the first thing that my mind goes to, and low in sugar. So I'll peel a big carrot because sometimes my child, especially my 3-year-old, thinks like a really big vegetable is fun for some reason. I just try to keep it fun. That's always the number one thing I try to do. Or I also, I really love this brand called Perfectly Free Fruit Bites. They are a healthier, funner fruit snack. So as a dietitian, I'm not a huge fan of fruit snacks in general. I think they sometimes disguise themselves as healthy but like the Welch's fruit snacks, for example, they contain like 18 grams of sugar. But I found this brand and they are very low in calories and they only have 5 grams of added sugar and a half a serving of fruit per serving. And they're colorful, so my toddlers think they're fun. So if I have to give them something in that witching hour time frame that's going to satisfy their desire for fun and also make them feel heard by me, which I think is also really important, I'll give them that, and that will really help sometimes diffuse the tension and help us enter dinner in a positive, happy state. It's amazing how food can impact so many things like tension and like happiness. I mean, it really is, it's so important to family time. So to answer your question, I think we should be thinking about fiber and maybe something that you would have already put on their dinner plate. Like, so if you were planning to chop up some cucumbers and put it on their dinner plate that evening and you already have some prepared, right, on your cutting board, giving that to them is a good solution because then they're kind of eating part of what the dinner was going to be anyway. But I would recommend staying away from don't give them the goldfish, don't give them the snacky foods that are contributing to this, I guess, environment of over snacking on low nutrient foods.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I used to do with mine. I used to just give them a piece or a part of the meal I was already going to be serving. And I always served fruit and vegetables with pretty much every meal, but definitely at dinner. And so I would just pull out the fruit that I was serving or the vegetables, like you said, and offer that at 4:30. And then the pressure was off in a lot of ways for them to eat those foods at dinner because they ate them when they were hungry. And I think that's a great way of handling it as well. What other challenges for parents do you see aside from the timing factor that they face with their snacking toddlers?
Options can be overwhelming. And there are so many options in the grocery aisles. And it's hard to take the time, first of all, to do the research and figure out which foods are better than the others. But it's also overwhelming just the sheer volume of options that are out there. So I see that being a really big struggle for a lot of my friends who have children the same age as mine. They often will ask me as a health professional, which foods that they should choose. And I try to help navigate that. But I think that, overall, just anybody walking into a grocery store today could feel some anxiety, not only because of the amount of options that are there, but also the amount of information that's out there these days on the internet. And
yeah. Do you find any particular aisle particularly overwhelming? I myself walk down the cereal and granola bar aisle and the fruit snack aisle, and I am like, oh my gosh, I don't know how parents navigate this.
I get
Yeah, I mean, I get questions all the time. What's the best granola bar? And it's like, it changes every year. It's that whole idea of, I know parents want like a brand and they want you to tell them exactly what to go buy. But at the same time, and I'd love your thoughts on this, at the same time, it's that whole idea of teach a fisherman how to fish versus just tell him what to get, because the brands change so much, the products change so much. And so I guess, it does take time to look through the labels and to look at the back of the package and not be drawn in so totally by the front of the package, but to really verify and validate what's in these foods. And that's just beyond so many parents and the time that they have, and financially sometimes it's beyond what they can do. And so what would your advice be about that?
Yeah, the cereal aisle is certainly overwhelming. I tell people, stick to the outer edge of the grocery store and the freezer aisle. And you know what? Some of my favorite snack brands can be found there, whereas a lot of the more sugar-laden, high-calorie snacks can be found in the middle of the store. Some of the snacks and foods that I really enjoy that I find to be incredibly convenient, aside from whole foods like lean meats, fruits and vegetables and whole grains, can be found in the aisles, and that like the produce aisles and the freezer aisles and the dairy aisle. So, for example, the fruit bites that I just mentioned, those are in the produce aisle, which is indicative of, where they belong in the diet as well. The freezer aisle has all kinds of really great foods there. And I think sometimes as parents, we think of the freezer aisle as, the ice cream and the popsicles, but right across from there, you'll find all the frozen fruits and vegetables. You'll find, some good brands that contain frozen meats, that, you can put in your freezer and pop out at the end of the week when you may have not gone grocery shopping since, last Sunday. In fact, there's this one new product that I love. It's called Grateful Burger, and it's a 60-40 blended burger of high quality meat and fresh vegetables. I mean, kids love hamburgers. But the problem with hamburgers is that you put it on the plate surrounded by salad or vegetables, and you hope that your toddler will go for the vegetables first, but of course they're going to go for the burger first and they might fill up on it. So this solves that problem because it's meeting parents, where they need to be met by blending the vegetables in with the meat. So those tiny bellies get filled up with both the meat and the vegetables at once, which I think is totally brilliant. So yeah, I mean, I think that trying to navigate the grocery store and stick to the aisles where you'll find high quality foods is one thing. And then in terms of if you have to go down the middle aisles, stick to the basics. Find the brands that work. Find the ones that have 100% whole grains. Look for the lowest amount of sugar possible. Just, stick to as much of the basics as possible. And I think that focusing on the basics and focusing on the wholesome ingredients could be your Northern Star or your compass, so to say.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go. So, you've made it through the first year with your kiddo, and life is crazy. You need Parent Savers, an audio podcast providing new moms and dads with the practical information to help preserve their sanity. With the help of our experts, parents of toddlers get the superhero strength they need to tackle the world and the next dirty diaper. Parent Savers is part of the Parents on Demand network. Look for our free network app in Apple and Android to discover more great parenting shows and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.
So we've talked about timing being a challenge with snacking toddlers. We've talked about the endless options that are available to parents for snacks for their toddlers. What else? Is there anything else that really stands out as a big challenge that parents face?
Honestly, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Like there's so many challenges. I think another challenge is like when other people are giving snacks to your children, you don't have control over that. So
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, like, so if you're, sports teams or schools or daycare, you don't always have control over what your child is eating throughout the day. And, you don't want to be like that mom that complains or that seems a little bit too involved in, you don't want to be that helicopter mom, but at the same time you do, because you want to make sure that your children are eating foods that are acceptable to you. So I think threading that needle can be a little hard as well.
Yeah. I just did a podcast interview with another mom who is the parent of a young athlete, and very similar concerns like lack of policy around what types of snacks should be offered, feeling a lack of agency around what her children eat in that environment. So that's very interesting. The other thing that comes up for me is a lot of parents, I feel like, don't feel like they have like full control over what to offer and what to allow their kids to eat. I hear parents a lot asking their children, particularly their young children, what would you like to eat for your snack? Giving that agency over to the child as opposed to maintaining that for themselves. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it needs to be qualified. So, okay, if you ask your child what they want to eat for a snack, what are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, I want a cookie or I want a cupcake because, they don't really understand consequences at this point. But research does show that giving your child a choice, it actually does help them eat healthy, but you have to make those choices healthy. So for example, I'll say to Madeline in the morning, for breakfast, would you like scrambled eggs or oatmeal? And making sure that the options are contained to 2 or 3. Really don't want to get more complicated than that because it's overwhelming for their minds to make a decision beyond, 2 or 3 options. And then, but you're also giving them the autonomy to make decisions for themselves, which is what kids really want. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like they're getting a little bit more independence in each day, and they want to feel like their parents trust them to make decisions for themselves. So as parents, it's not our job to make them eat. That's their job, but it's our job to offer them healthy, nutritious foods at appropriate times.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. So what's your perspective on what parents are doing right when it comes to toddler snacking?
I love that question because I think that so often we're looking at what we're doing wrong and we're trying to find ways to make ourselves improve. And of course, as with any tough job, there's always room for improvement. But as parents, we all want to do the right thing. And so we are doing a lot of things that are right. We want our toddlers to grow up healthy and strong. And we're doing a lot of things like encouraging them to try a variety of foods. We're always trying to introduce new foods. I think that's really great. I know a lot of parents are advocating for healthier food in schools and policies around snack time, like you just said, and that's fantastic. Parents are researching brands, they're scouring the internet for advice and, trying to teach their children the difference between treats and healthy foods. And those are all really, really great things. And as parents, we're all under a lot of stress. So we really do need to take the time to pat ourselves on the back for the things we are doing right to help our children develop healthy eating habits. And, whoever's listening to this podcast right now is doing something right because
I agree.
Right?
I agree. Yes. I say that all the time at the end of the show. It's like, if you even tuned in, you're doing something good for your family. You're learning.
Exactly. And I think as parents, that's all we can do. We can only do our best. And if you're constantly striving to find better ways to feed your family and you're always learning, then you're doing great and you're an awesome parent.
Awesome. Okay. I want to kind of move into a phase of rapid fire questions that just kind of detail some scenarios I'm seeing, and what you think that's all about and what we should do as a parent about it. So are you game?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I see this whole like almost Pavlov's dog syndrome with toddlers. When they hop in a stroller or they hop in the car, they automatically want a snack. What's that all about, and what should parents do about that?
I see it all the time. So honestly, I used to do this with my children until it occurred to me how dangerous this can actually be. So first of all, let's talk about how the fact that if you have a small child, feeding them food in the car can actually be a choking hazard. So let's just get that disclaimer out of the way.
Good point.
Okay, we want to give them, it's almost tempting to give children snacks in the car and in the stroller because we want them to be energized by the time we get where we're going. And we want to avoid the hangry horrors in public. And that makes perfect sense. And frankly, we're trying to keep them quiet.
I was going to say, well, what about those parents that are trying to pacify their children and keep them well behaved?
Yeah, exactly. It is so tempting, but it's really not a good thing to do because you are promoting mindless eating. So when they're in the car, instead, maybe they can be playing with something, or you could both be talking about what you see outside. During the holidays, we like to say, point out all the Christmas decorations or count all the pumpkins you see. And that could be a fun game. It could be a time for bonding, and that can help keep, or you could do sing-alongs or something, anything else besides the food. Not to mention it gets your car super messy.
Yeah.
And potentially your child extremely messy, depending on what you give them. And then the mindless eating, we really want to teach our children to be mindful about their food and pay attention to their food because that will help them promote healthy eating habits as adults. Mindless eating has been shown to result in overeating as adults. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that right now when we have so much influence over how our children eat.
Mm-hmm. Agree. What about sweet snacks?
Hey, I am a realist. I think that there's a place for sweet snacks. Sweet snacks are not going anywhere, and our kids are going to be encountered by them all the time. So here's what I do. I think we should all be exposing our toddlers to sweet treats, but at appropriate times. So birthday parties, holidays, family gatherings. And this way, they're beginning to understand that sweet treats are allowed and they can be enjoyed, just not every single day and whenever they want. I think it's important to develop a healthy relationship to desserts and to sweet treats and to help them understand their place in the diet so that later they don't, if you restrict them too much, when they get in front of the cookie jar, they're just going to eat all of them, right? They won't understand moderation. And if you give them too much, then, that's going to become a part of their everyday life and they'll be taking in too much sugar and calories. So you really want to thread the needle. And I actually have one more point to make on the sweet treats thing that I don't often hear, but sweet treats do not have to come after dinner.
Correct.
Yeah. As a mom of 2 toddlers, I avoid sugar after dinner at all costs because I know that's going to impact sleep. And I'm really trying to get as much sleep as I can these days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've actually been known to give my girls after breakfast treats if it's a special occasion, because then I know that they're going to get some exercise in before lunch and before nap time to work off all those extra calories and sugar. So that's a little tidbit I like to give sometimes about the sweet treats is that, after dinner, it doesn't have to happen then.
Yeah, I think we're so programmed to offer sweets after dinner. Oftentimes, too, rewarding our kids for eating their dinner, we give them a sweet or we offer or bribe them with a sweet, which is not good either. But yeah, sweets can happen anytime during the day. I think it's more of, as a parent, having that conscious awareness of when they are happening and not being sort of caught at the end of the day like, oh my gosh, my child's had, 3 or 4 sweets today and I didn't even recognize that. Just having that awareness of, and that control, loose control. I don't hate the word control, but I'm careful when I use the word control, but that they have some awareness around and some feeling of power around when, sweets are happening during the day. What if parents and toddlers don't see eye to eye on snacking?
Yeah, power struggle. That happens every single day, I think, in my household. You have to find a common ground. And, parents and children, I think of all ages, but especially toddlers who don't understand why they can't get what they want. It's important to stay consistent. Use that as an education moment. I like to attach healthy foods to performance. So, for example, I'll say, hey, here's a carrot. Do you know what part of your body this helps? And, maybe she'll, know or not. And then we talk about like eyesight. And then we say, hey, like, let's name all of the orange foods in the refrigerator. And, I kind of use those distraction and entertaining tactics to withdraw attention away from the power struggle and direct it towards something positive and fun and educational. And even if it has nothing to do with food, generally speaking, that diverted attention tactic tends to work to diffuse that power struggle, to diffuse that tension, and to, help everybody get what they want. Because really what the child wants is to feel full and is to feel satisfied. They just don't know how to get there. And it's up to us to teach them, how to get there. I mean, I have a funny story. Like the other day, my daughter, she was just hanging out and I saw a piece of chocolate and I said, I think that this would be a good time. She's been asking for chocolate a lot lately and both of my daughters seemed to be in a really good place. It was after lunch. It was like well before nap. And I said, hey, you guys want to split this piece of chocolate? And they said, yeah, they were like so excited because it was totally random. And I just decided it was a good time to offer it. And then after my daughter ate it, we have this little indoor pogo stick. She was like, can I do the pogo stick? I was like, of course. She was like, but mommy, do I have power? And I was like, of course you have power. She was like, but I ate chocolate. And I said, yes. And she was like, and chocolate doesn't give you power. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then she was like,
gives you fast power that's going to wear out pretty soon.
And I was like, but what did you eat before that? And she was like, oh, I ate lunch before that. I'm like, yeah, so you have power. But it was just so funny. I was like, wow, I can really hear myself in her.
Well, that's great. That's great. And it sounds like you've, simplified it so that it was really age appropriate for a toddler to make those connections.
Yeah, I try. I mean, I think all parents, struggle with that. Sometimes it's not easy to make everything fun because you're tired and in your own, life and trying to make everything, hold everything together in your household. But whenever you can make something fun and educational, I think that tactic tends to work.
Mm-hmm. So to wrap up this conversation, if you were sitting across from a parent of a toddler right now, and this parent's striving to give her toddler healthy snacks, feel like she's got some control over the situation, but not too much control, what would you say to her?
Well, first, you are not alone and you're doing a great job and you're an amazing mom. So let's start there. But I think that I would say, it's not your job to make your child eat. It's your job to offer healthy foods at appropriate times and to make the eating environment as pleasant as possible for everyone. Your child's job is to eat, but if she doesn't eat, that's okay. If you keep doing your job, she'll eventually do her job. Also, keep some tricks up your sleeve. Educational tactics that your child loves, whether it's math problems or colors or anything that really keeps her brain activated, I think is a really good way to create a healthy and happy eating environment. I find that once you get involved in a good conversation, the eating kind of follows because you're taking the pressure off the actual action of eating and you're placing it towards something more constructive. Thinking more of it as a behavioral thing rather than a nutrition thing can tend to help. Giving your child a choice between 2 or 3 healthy foods is always a good tactic. It helps them contain their decision to a finite amount of foods. And research shows that it develops healthy eating habits to do that because you're giving them that autonomy. And finally, I think just in the grocery store, walk in, take a deep breath, try to stick to the perimeter and see what you can find there and just do your best to not get overwhelmed in the grocery store. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but focusing on those packaged foods that are helping you solve your, problems between convenience and health is a really good way to maximize your time in the kitchen and with your kids. I think those are some of the top line things that I would say just off the bat to help her, give her a few tricks of the trade, I suppose, to help with the eating issue at her house.
That's all good advice. I like that a lot. Stephanie, thanks for being on the show. Where can listeners find you and connect with you?
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation and love this topic. I can be found, my company's website is freshcommunications.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and I am personally on those platforms as well. So yeah, I can be found in all of those places. It is not hard to find me. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like listeners to know before we say goodbye?
Just that this too shall pass. I think that as parents of toddlers, it can be discouraging. Feeding your toddlers is not easy, no matter whether you have a really picky toddler on your hand or a toddler who loves, to eat fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. It can be challenging any time. So, just taking it one day at a time, trying to implement these changes gradually and not trying to change things overnight. Just taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. And I think that motto and going about it that way will help, save stress in the end.
Well said. Thank you so much,
Jill.
Stephanie. So I hope you enjoyed learning about toddler snacking with Stephanie. It's an important area to master so that your child is getting all the benefits from healthy snacking habits. If you've been struggling with your toddler and snacking, let us know how to help you out by posting a comment over at the show notes at www.jillcastle.com/075 or post your comments in my Facebook page, The Nourished Child. So this podcast is a resource for free nutrition and feeding education. If you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or on one of your favorite Android apps. And if you feel like leaving a review, that's thebomb.com, friend, and I would really appreciate it. There's more free resources on my website, including articles, other podcast episodes, a weekly newsletter with tips and resources, and some free printables, all of which were created to help you nourish and nurture your child inside and out. I also have a library of programs and books, and I work with families one-on-one. These are fee-based options available to work with me more in depth. You can find out more about them on my website, jillcastle.com. And then last, I'm just super excited about my next episode. I'm digging deep and sharing some of my mom wisdom. Specifically, I'll be talking about 10 things I've learned from nourishing and raising my own 4 kids. Yep, it's about nutrition and feeding and some other stuff. I sure hope you'll join in. But for today, I'm delighted you joined me. As always, you're helping yourself and your child just by tuning in. Be sure to give the little ones in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.